I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, and Andrew Kuo does not take days off. And from what I've heard, he is flush with newfound optimism. Mr. Andrew Kuo, why are you so optimistic?
I'm excited that the RNC is happening. All my boys are up there doing their Luka. Nah, man, I'm hyped from seeing Luka Doncic hit a game-winning shot. I got that big Luka energy.
You are psyched.
I am psyched. It's a nice day in New York City. I have a newfound optimism. It's been growing, but now that I can see September a little bit, I don't know. I'm feeling good about 2021.
I like that. I like some optimism from you. That's nice to hear. Mm-hmm. Why September? What is it about September? Is it the cooler weather? Is it the return of non-existent fashion weeks? What is it that's got you all in a lather?
Well, I feel like the unofficial beginning of every year is September, just because of school and the end of summer, and that's when I think people get hyped up. The preseason's over. Game 1, September, you know? I feel like that's the reboot every year for me personally. And I feel good, man. Like New York City wise, we're doing great with the coronavirus. The stats coming out from the rest of the country are up and down, but like we know so much more about what's happening than we did a few months ago. And a lot of this stuff is what we were hoping and what we predicted, and nothing wild has happened since. So I do feel buoyed a little bit by what's to come.
Sam Bowie over here.
I love it. I mean, who had a great career, man. People dog him, but like Sam Bowie did his damn thing.
September. This is typically when you're getting back from cliff diving in like Scorpios. Mm-hmm. And you arrive back in New York City.
Eating langostinos on some yacht.
I'm with you that September is the actual start of the year. In New York City, at least. Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. Because August is usually disgraceful.
August sucks.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
People with means leave.
Yeah.
And if you're stuck here in August, generally speaking, you kind of feel like the lowest of the low. And I don't mean this in a snotty way. I mean, it's visible. Like everyone's who with other options has bounced. And you're just kind of like left around the half-abandoned, sweltering city. Like, oh, come on. How come I don't get to be cliff diving with Quo, in Scorpios? There's definitely a stigma about being stuck in New York for August. And not even like going up to Woodstock, going up to Maine. You're just like, I'm the summer guy.
Well, we're so unfair to ourselves, and it's a place of privilege for sure, but we shame people who leave, and we shame people who stay. And I'm like, can we just take a win somewhere? Like, August is pretty cool, like it's the last hurrah of the summer. There's tomatoes, there's watermelon, cantaloupes are nice right now. I don't know if it's a season, I just got a nice one. But like, August is awesome. It's 1/12 of our life, so we should enjoy it. But you're shamed if you do, and you're shamed if you don't.
For the record, I'm generally here in August.
I'm always here in August.
Yeah. But I feel mildly shamed when I'm here in August.
Well, I want the Cookies Clubhouse in Montauk, but, the COVID really derailed that.
Yes, the Rushmeyer's Classic.
I want to be grilling some delicious vegetables out in the water. Come on, man.
Head over to the Sloppy Tuna for the after party.
But did you read that Jerry Seinfeld is not... I'm not the only one with some optimism. Jerry Seinfeld has come out. Finally, his silence was complicit, but today he was like, New York will be back, baby.
Yeah, I read his op-ed in the New York Times. It was a response in some ways. I don't know if it was specifically a response. I didn't think about it too much to any one piece, but to the general wave of op-ed pieces, essays, just, I don't know, blog spots, live journals,
Diary
what have
land.
you, about the fact that New York is done. It's over. We're out of here. I don't really get that, though, because this just seems to fall under my personal ethos of humans are very adaptable creatures. And we went from saying, we're no way are we staying inside for more than 2 weeks, to we're never coming back out, to we're leaving New York forever, to it'll never come back. Says who?
Yeah.
You know, I just mean, why would that be the case? Why would this be the thing to end New York City? What, COVID? Like, get out of here.
I mean, I hope we've been clear all these months. I mean, I mostly am wistful and lament for the things that are having trouble surviving, like our restaurants and our friends' clubs and our friends' psyches, you know. But yeah, I think this whole time we've been like, New York is resilient and this thing is doable and we can do it, and we just have to be smart and wait.
I guess it's more that, well, why would New York be uniquely unfit to handle COVID in a way that other places aren't? Like, Phoenix is over. Tempe is it's a wrap.
Well, I think
Jacksonville, dunzo.
the reason why, obviously, is New York has the most to lose, right? Like, Hong Kong had the most to lose in, like, a China reoccupying it, and it was decimated in less than a year. There's no Hong Kong like we knew it anymore. And New York was worth a discussion, because when I say we had the most to lose, it's that the architecture, on one level, it's the architecture of our city and the way it's built from the bottom up physically. And also the way it operates as a cultural, financial capital of the world, with the internet already threatening that stability, because those things, like Wall Street, is the trading floor is just for show. Like, there's no need for Wall Street as an idea to exist in New York at all previous to COVID. Is there a reason for culture to exist in New York? We haven't had good rappers or bands in decades. I think we're the epicenter of contemporary art, but that grip has been loosened in the last 10 years too. So there was a lot to lose, but it turns out everybody was kind of suffering at the same rate. So the advantages New York has are still within reaching distance, I think.
Well, to me, it's more a case of New York City having things that are cultural that were affected by COVID, and financial that are affected by COVID. Indisputably true. But what version of New York are we talking about, right? Are we saying that 2019 New York was the peak of Gotham, and that's been lost forever? I hope so. That's not to say that I want things to go out of business and people to leave. I'm not taking any firm line in the sand. But, like, I think we were in pretty much agreement that New York in 2019 was not great for a bunch of different reasons. And
There's always something to.
yeah, I just don't think anyone thought New York in 2019 was incredibly interesting.
What was your peak year?
I mean, I think we all have that nostalgia, right? When we got here, when we were in our early 20s, when we lived differently, you know.
That's
So
the
I think,
answer. Whenever you were youngest and healthiest.
yeah, I think that's always going to happen. But I just don't think there was a great argument for saying, wow, 2019, apex New York until COVID felled it. I think you could say, I don't know, 2010 was probably better. Like 2005, probably better.
I really loved the post-internet era when all those bands like The Strokes, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, they were all kind of on the come up, and the print industry was booming, and Gawker was a thing. To me, that seems like kind of like the halcyon days, right?
I agree. Yeah, everyone was putting out magazines. It was before the financial collapse of like 2007.
Yeah.
There's a period before that. There were so many magazines, so many events, so many parties, so much music. Williamsburg was like popping. East Village was popping. You still had nightlife that hadn't transformed into bottle service. It was a very good year.
Yeah, there was a transfer of power from art from the YBA as a young British artist to New York, back to New York, and it was exciting. Also, my young, healthy years,
Right,
so,
right. That is the. I agree. It's like, and we were young.
yes. I had energy that I have a different energy now. Let's just say.
And it was 16 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So, but this, I do think last year was the best year in history. I have to, right? Because that's just something that
This is the theory that you've roped yourself into when it comes to basketball and music. So now you have to say 2019 was peak New York.
But it has to work that way because technology is just insane. Like, do I want to go back to 2001 when I had a flip phone? Of course I do. I was young. Do I want a flip phone? No. So it's like it's the bias versus the reality thing.
I would also say that technology is more linear than, say, like the lifespan of a city. Things happen in the way that a city grows because
Aren't they connected?
they are connected, but they are also different. Mm-hmm. To say, well, New York is better now because there's a bunch of high rises where they weren't zoned before. You're like, well, that's debatable. To say that this phone has a better camera than the one from 2 years ago, well, sure it does.
Yeah.
I guess you could say like the gritty phones of the flip age have a more interesting aesthetic or something. But I'm saying I don't think New York in 1970 was better than New York in 1960. Yeah, there's all these variables. New York right now is probably not better than 2019, right? Even though it's chronologically later.
Yeah, it's important where you take the sample size, and COVID will maybe consume our entire year, and I would say this is probably one of the lowest points humanity has ever been at. But I did not live through World War I or II, which seems so abstract to me.
Yeah, I would say our lifetime is a better way of viewing it because, the Holocaust, or like even the Spanish flu is so much worse.
Yeah, even measles or
polio,
for sure in our lifetime. But it's hard to tell, right? Because I think the world, New York.
But we're also talking about this as privileged New Yorkers, right? Because
I have a TV. I have a place to sleep, for sure.
Well, I also mean, if you were talking to an Iraqi, they'd be like, sorry, 2001 was way worse.
Yeah.
That was really bad. 2001 was wild. Yeah. But might actually not have been bad as like 2005. That was incredibly bad. Yeah. 2009, that was trash. So depends on who you ask.
So this is the only reason I have stuck to kind of this simulation idea that every year is better than the next, because it depends on who you ask, right?
It's true.
So it's like, well, the best rap music was this era, and someone's like, well, I don't listen to rap. It's like, oh, our worlds are so different that I cannot make any sort of judgment except that things progressively through technology, through medicine and science, and through just brains getting smarter. Like we don't use horses and carriages anymore. That's not on the table,
Well, so then I have to ask you this question. Mm-hmm. Is your optimism about September just because it's in the future? Because it's next month?
It's not, because I have felt the opposite. It's sample size, right?
What will October be like?
Well, in March, I was fearing the worst, right? So this is what I mean by sample size. It's like, it depends on when you pluck your feelings from. But overall, if you're looking at a curve, like if you look at any curve close enough, it has ups and downs.
I gotta say, I do sort of like New York right now better than I did, say, a year ago. Just overall. I mean, obviously, we're wearing masks, and I'm excluding people losing their jobs and death. I'm saying from just sort of a walking around daily experience. Of course, I miss being inside places and going to events and just being indoors at various things. But like August in New York, where it's not flooded with tourists, where you can kind of get around however you want, you spend more time outside than ever before. I feel like it's a habitable city, and I don't see this apocalyptic vision that other people do of this being a hellhole, this hellscape that everyone needs to escape and flee to living in Rye, New York, or Connecticut, or 45 minutes outside of Troy. Like, get out of New York. You have to get out now. The homeless have taken over and they're controlling the subways. Like, I just don't see this, I don't know, cinematic version of New York in the 70s that people are seemingly attempting to thrust upon the city via the media.
If you're listening to Cookies as our beloved Patreon subscribers in real time, I would like to signal boost that New York City is beautiful right now. There's a calm and sort of understanding vibe-wise that's happening, to your point, that is the opposite of this weird, the future the conservatives want, right? Like, it is straight up beautiful in New York right now. And it could be the volume of people is lower, but like,
it's freaking awesome, man. There's so few people. You just run into people all the time.
It's wonderful, and but it's not without its defund WIST, but it's not without its sadness. And like, I think it's interesting when bad things happen to people. Let's say you break up with someone you really like, you get dumped. There's a time where it really hurts, but you're forced to kind of think about yourself a little bit, not in like a egomaniacal way, but you're asked to reassess things like, well, what did I do wrong, and how can I get better, and what did I lose, what did I let slip through my fingers? And New York City, I think, is going through that a little bit. We're forced to, right? Like, we're getting walloped, and we have to kind of like, do I sound like Joe Biden when I say wallop?
Whoa, dropping that malarkey.
I like that word. It's just like there should be a food item called the wallop. But I think we're forced to think about the place where we live and think about how we want to live here and our friends. And we've done this for months and months. And now we've come, I think, if I can generalize, we've come to the point where like people can talk about this stuff with eloquence in a way we couldn't in March because it was just fear. And New York City has this vibe to it that is like a really beautiful thing right now.
My thing is just, you don't need to blame New York. If you're over it, you're over it. That's okay.
Yeah.
Like people are dealing with COVID and lives upended in different ways. And not all of them are great. I do think if you are someone who says, you know what, I just don't want to be around people anymore. I don't want to be in New York. It's scary to me. You don't have to write an essay about it.
That's totally legit. That's like legit feeling.
It's legit. People move out of the city all the time.
Yeah.
And maybe one of the things that kind of made New York lame was people who used to move out of the city when they reached a certain expiration date, just move to Brooklyn instead.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I love that move. Yeah.
But it used to be moving to Long Island, move to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Now maybe it's move upstate, but that was always a thing. Instead, the suburbs just became Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So this is not saying that the suburbs were better when they were a different way. I'm sorry, Brooklyn was better as a different thing. I just mean that's about as natural as it gets, getting sick of New York City.
Yeah. And
so, yeah, if you want to leave. That's cool.
Yeah. And you're totally right. Like I think the like button or seeing likes have really shifted. Like, we can't eat a slice of pizza without being like, this is my number one slice of pizza in all of New York. I'm like, just enjoy your slice. But I hear you. That's interesting to me. I don't know. And I thought about that quite a bit because, a lot of my friends have this. I think it's cultural to say, like, I'm always working. I don't take any days off, right? And
I don't know anybody who uses that kind of phrase.
And I'm like, stress is not working. If you're stressed, you're stressed. you're not working. Work is work and stress is stress, and like stress informs work and vice versa. So like if something happens in New York City that doesn't float your boat, it doesn't have to be New York City. It could just be like, oh, there's junkies on my block now. It's not like New York City's going to hell. I'm like, well, someone has to help these guys, and that might be me. And it's my block because there's a methadone clinic 100 feet away. That's why this is happening. It's not because New York City is going down the tubes and I need to give them $80 out of my pocket. It's just like where you pick your battle is kind of says more than the battle.
And also it depends on what your vision of the city and what you view going down the tubes is. If seeing more homeless people is your version of the city going down the tubes, well, then that's different from mine.
Yeah, totally.
Wow, New York sucks. There's homeless people around. Well, they were here.
Yes, right.
They were around. Yeah. Like you're seeing them now, but they were around.
Right.
So
yeah.
And if you're saying this is not the version of New York I liked, cool.
Yeah.
Be out. And I don't even have a problem with all these essays. I just don't care.
Yeah.
Write them, publish them. When I said you don't need to, it was more like you can just do it. You don't have to make an apology for it. You don't have to make a big scene. I, for one, am fine if you do. Mm-hmm. But I just mean, people get over the city all the time. Like the most trite form of New York City-based essays is "Here's why I'm leaving."
Joan
It's been
Didion
going on forever. Yeah, it's like the most. It's so hackneyed.
Slouching towards Bethlehem.
So, but here's one thing though. So everyone's just moving upstate, or a lot of people are. Maybe some are going to California, elsewhere. A lot of people are moving upstate. And from what I've heard, people are, they're spending double what a property cost a year ago with like 12 offers for a spot. Some like sight unseen. Like, oh, is it, is there some space? Is there some yards? How close is the neighbor? Okay, good. I'll buy it. Cool. Because the prices are so much lower, even comparatively.
Yeah, the market was really
high.
bad upstate last year.
Right. So even though people are getting absolutely taken for a ride by upstate realtors, it's still very cheap compared to, say, New York City.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Like you're paying $350,000 for a place upstate that probably cost $180,000 last year. But you're like, that's like a third of an apartment. Mm-hmm. But I do wonder what's going to happen in 2 years when people are now living in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York. Like, wait, what did we just do? They didn't move to the suburbs. You moved to just a middle of nowhere to flee the city? Like, now what? You just move back?
I always think about that, like, that exact thing. And, you're getting a house, but if you told me, if you were like, Quo, can you lend me $350? I'm like, Ben, of course I can. I'm like, well, I gotta go to the ATM. That's $350. Okay, I got a budget. Make sure I can do it. We're talking about $350,000. Like, I can't even count to 35. Like, and I know why people do it. And you're getting a house, and presumably you're getting something that is an asset that you can move. Unlike the Knicks, like this is something that other people will want in the future. But you assume, but that's a lot of pizza, and I don't know.
My assumption is that in 2 years, that market's just going to absolutely crumble. I don't know anything about real estate, but if you're fleeing New York to go upstate because you just want space, you just don't want to be around people, well, like those towns are different, man.
Yeah, I know.
There's a difference in these places. All of a sudden, you go from New York City to driving 30 minutes to the closest coffee shop. That's how you decided to live. I just feel like people are going to end up being up there and saying, wait, what did we just do?
You know what? I didn't think about it until just then when you said coffee shop. Like the D. Williamsburgization of the world might be happening, because we've talked about this before. I think Williamsburg is one of the most influential movements in the last 20 years in the world. You go into any city, there's like a little version of what they think Williamsburg is that you can go visit, whether it be a block or 10 blocks. And we might be phasing out of that, and instead of having something at your convenience and having like a cheese shop, a nice coffee shop, if we spread out more, there is no chance for that kind of culture to occur, right? Like,
I'm trying to think of some towns upstate
doesn't
where I've spent time, and it kind of goes on a town by town basis.
but
Because there are some that are, rough little burgs. They have a bunch of spots that are just for like trout fishermen.
ooh,
And then the next one will be like Narrowsburg, which is like, there's some art galleries, there's some cute boutiques. It's like 7 coffee shops. So they kind of like almost gentrify small towns in the same way they do neighborhoods.
but how is there foot traffic?
Because people just drive into town.
So but a town is different than Williamsburg, right? Like, I guess there's
I'm saying you end up getting like that one place that's
yeah.
does all that stuff, and it's always like the sundries store, whatever you want to call it, like provisions. It's like, yeah, we sell like like a up price where's upmarket, whatever the word I'm looking for here is.
Upselling?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, upselling better chips than they have at the mobile.
For sure.
Or
right?
oh yeah, there's a few farm raised chickens sitting over there.
Which is huge, I think.
We'll have a little farmers market on the weekend.
That's important. Right, like
I'm saying all those places, once you get like a critical mass of New York people, you end up getting one
Yeah.
of those spots.
for sure. Yeah, I wonder like how this will keep on changing. I unfortunately think people with money who we don't really talk about lovingly will buy up all the property that's been vacated, and when we're all ready to come back, they will have a stronger foothold than they did before. Not all of it, but that's just an observation, I guess. I don't even know how to talk about that. But I'm
with you. My general inclination and rule of thumb on things like this is that the little guy won't win.
no.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, the little and middle guys not winning COVID, but we're alive, and that's where my optimism is. And my optimism lies in like the simple things are gonna make me so happy. Like I think museums are gonna open up this week. That's awesome. That really floated my boat a little bit. I'm excited to maybe make an appointment and go to the Met and see all those stolen artifacts. But it's so funny that Jerry Seinfeld put this out, because isn't he the apex curmudgeon about New York? Like, didn't he create a replica of New York City in L.A. and complain about like soup lines? Like he got rich off of complaining about New York, and now he's telling us to stop complaining about New York.
Is he doing New York face?
I mean, Seinfeld was more informative to me than all of my years in school, but and I love Jerry Seinfeld now. I watch all of his new Netflix shows, and his last stand-up was okay. And I'm actually with him on this op-ed. But it's just ironic, like it's just jarring to maybe hear someone like Larry David be like, look on the bright side of things. I'm like, wait, what? Okay, Larry David, I like you, so I'm going to do that, but this is awkward.
I read most of Jerry Seinfeld's op-ed. Did not find it that exciting. It was just what you think. That New York has a specific energy, has its own culture. You can't get that over Zoom. It has to be in person. But, right, sure, of course.
That's a
doubt.
mild-ass take.
Once people are allowed to commingle again, in many ways they'll do that. We've had FaceTime technology for a long time. We didn't just only do FaceTime. We still went to see each other in person. Some people might be like, you know what? I only Zoom from here on in. Okay, like go off, King.
What would be the hottest take? The hottest take would be like, billionaires are also nice people, as Jerry Seinfeld speaks as a billionaire. Like, that would be a hot take, being like, oh, we'll take care of you. We are New York City, and we're not bad people because we're rich. I'm like, I've never read that op-ed.
Well, let's be fair. Sometimes the good guys win. Sixers ownership, Apollo Global Management, they have a hedge fund. They made $100 million shorting commercial real estate during COVID. So,
Well, COVID was good
respect.
for businessmen all around. Sort of like war was good for businessmen when that happens. But yeah, maybe what I'm saying is just like Jerry Seinfeld coming out and be like, I believe in trickle down economics. I'd be like, ooh, I was not expecting that. But I don't know. I mean, I'll take all the optimism I can get. Like last night, I was watching, as everyone was, the Mavs game, and Luka hit that shot, and I got kind of emo about it. Defund Whist, cancel Whist. But Mike Breen goes bang, and there was his catchphrase is bang. If you Patreon subscribers aren't familiar with Knicks commentator Mike Breen,
Legend.
I love him. Hall of Famer, I think. And then it felt like he said bang, and there was a pause because it was jarring. Like, are we allowed to feel this joy? It's a branding move by him. It felt like something we wouldn't really blink at. He's like, he's going to say bang. And then he repeated it like bang, bang, and it got louder and louder. And it was almost like a defiant cry, I thought it felt like to me, being like, not only is Luka the GOAT, the NBA's back and we're back. We're doing this, you know? I mean, I'm reading way too much into it.
Yeah, it's a lot of reading into it. But I feel you. It was a punctuation mark. Mm-hmm. You had a day of optimism. You were floating along on cloud nine. Luka came in, hits an incredible game-winning shot. You hear the voice of the Knicks yell bang, bang. Yeah. I mean, how else is a young Andrew Kuo, 16 years removed from his glory days, supposed to respond? Of course it felt like a bang, bang from the heavens, a lightning bolt to your soul.
It was awesome.
Welcome
right?
back, Kuo. Kuo, welcome back.
Well, we have these moments, right? And like Kobe, it's the anniversary. Oh, Kobe's birthday was on Sunday, and it kind of got me thinking about the day he died and how powerful that image, some of those images were. Like, I forgot which teams, not that powerful, apparently. But, you know, like taking a shot clock violation. The video game footage of people go as their avatars going to Staples Center, I thought was very, very powerful. Just the feeling in our country was weird. And, you know, describing it, if you don't care about Kobe or our country or whatever, I don't know what your interest is, you know, it doesn't really do it justice. And I feel like that was like the Mike Breen call. It's like, well, if Kobe was a part of your life in good ways and antagonistic ways as a Laker who always beat you, like, his death was a real touchstone in our calendar.
Apologies for the ice cream truck outside of my apartment.
Are they playing the RZA song? Do you know about this? Well, you know about this, right? Good Humor paid the RZA to remake their jingle, and it sounds awesome, but it's a lot of minor keys, and it sounds like Candyman or like Philip Glass's score for the Candyman. It's terrifying, but it's awesome.
All right. I'm into that. Yeah, this is just sitting outside, apparently trying to lure the children of the neighborhood out for tasty frozen confection.
Children? It's got me going. I want to get some ice cream.
I mean, I might have just stopped recording, ran downstairs, got myself a nice bomb pop, and the audience would never be wiser.
We all died in February. This is a dream, and we're all eating ice cream.
Back to what you were saying about Kobe. It still feels very surreal that he died in that plane crash. Helicopter crash. Still feels very surreal. But it's also blended into the just texture of surrealness that we've lived with for the last year. It doesn't stand out even. It's just kind of woven within COVID and Donald Trump and all the other kind of madness that we've dealt with. Even the stuff yesterday, like Mamba, you're like, Kobe's birthday. That's right, Kobe Bryant. Like, poor dude. That sucked. Yeah. It's just another thing. You know, it's tough.
To your exact point earlier about COVID, I think human brains are so adaptable that the shock of Kobe's death, even a week later, people were like, "I'm tired of hearing about Kobe. Enough Kobe." And I'm like, "Oh, it was only 5 days ago, but I hear you." I had someone come up to me pre-COVID at a art opening, and they were just like, I am tired of Kobe Bryant. Does he matter that much? I'm like, I get that you're tired, but he does matter that much to people who care. Like, do people care about art hanging on the wall? Like, yes and no. I don't know. And we had kind of a nice discussion about it because I got it. I understand where he was coming from. And we got so, to your point, we got so accustomed to this feeling that it doesn't feel not only unique anymore, I feel a bit of shame because it's like, is it too subjective?
Do you think that basketball, I guess Twitter, sports fans, do we process grief better or worse than society in general? Is it all the same? I don't know. I feel like what you were saying before, sports are pretty good with like quick gestures. Like, okay, we're going to take this shot clock violation. We're going to write numbers on shoes. Like, sports are very good for quick symbolism.
Yep, Black Lives Matter on the court as we watch these games 100 times a game. Yeah, it's amazing at it. I think your question. I'll take I think human beings have a tough time with this option. I have a few threads that are just sports related, and having to talk about the untimely death of a sports icon is like hard to do with smart people who are used to just talking about sports in a context of a text thread. And it's been happening the last couple of days where people are like, well, this is my favorite Kobe play. It's like, rest in peace, Mamba, and like, I don't know if there's a right way to talk about any of this, but there's no right way to talk about happiness either.
Yeah, my group threads were fairly reticent, fairly quiet on Kobe this time around.
What's up with your boys?
I don't know. I'm on a lot of group chats. Kobe just kind of didn't come up.
All right. So the thread I'm on, like, it's people who knew Kobe, so it was extra a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, this was mostly really focused on, the playoffs. Like, it's very, very
huge day.
Very time stamped.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Luka, because there's plenty of basketball news to get into. We'll jump into it even earlier than normal because major events. We got Knicks in the NBA lottery. We got the Sixers, potential coaching change, elimination, the humiliating sweep by the Beantown Media Mafia.
But Luka.
But first,
let's Luka.
First, Luka. Yeah. Let's give Luka a little chatter. So, Luka Doncic, the magnificent second-year player on the Dallas Mavericks, hit to date the biggest shot of his career, which was a buzzer beater three from about 5 feet beyond the NBA line to take a 2-1 lead in the series against the favored Los Angeles Clippers. And he did this with, I believe, Kawhi Leonard was on him on that play.
And in a game where Kristaps Porzingis was hurt.
And his heroics were not limited solely to that play. He put together a absolutely monstrous stat line. I forget exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of 45 points, 17 rebounds, and 13 assists. Those crooked numbers can vary, whatever it was. But that was the scale. And he also, just down the stretch, even in that overtime period, I think he scored there, at least what I saw. Like, again, I did not really look at the numbers. I just watched the game. I watch the games. I'm not one of those nerds. I watch the games.
Are you telling me you watched the game, bro?
Dude, do you even watch the games? It's nerds. Like, what do you think about Melo? But yeah, he scored a couple. He scored a couple layups. He's got this remarkable way of shifting balance, core strength. He has the might of Chris Farley reincarnated. But he makes it look really, really easy, as if it's something that a normal person could kind of do. Dwayne Wade never had that, right? He always looked like he could do something that other mortals couldn't.
Wade had a little bit of a wet noodle vibe, too.
But he was also so physical. Mm-hmm. Doncic is physical, but in a different way. He just kind of stops, and the other guy moves, and then he makes a layup. It's really cool.
Yeah, I can't.
But he also hit that great shot.
Yes, that step back three that rattled in. And Yeah, I always want like a nickname. I don't like any of his nicknames. Like the Don Luca is like terrible, and like any Don reference is annoying. There's no Nacho reference anywhere, which is disappointing. But I want him to be called the Tank because not only is he built like one and moves like one, that's how they got him. And and yeah, like watching. I'm gonna get super vibey because also, I've stopped paying attention to stats as much because the BMM flipped the stats on us to favor certain Tobias Harris type players. But so like I was watching him during this week, and there's a vibe about him that is true to his promise. He has a greatness in him of like the half dozen players in the league that we love, right? Like James Harden, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, even Kawhi Leonard a little bit. He has that, man. And that's super rare. And I'm super grateful that he is this good because he's not Paul George. He's like Kevin Durant.
There's a certain thing about guys who kind of figured the game out, and Kawhi has figured it out in a different way. Durant figured it out in a different way, but it's command, right? Mm-hmm. It's the sense that they're controlling what's happening on the court. LeBron, obviously, I think Steph Curry, they're guys, and I know we're tying that to greatness, but this falls into the category of things that I don't love about Giannis. Because even when Giannis is awesome and destroying people, he's dominating, it doesn't feel like he's a puppeteer.
That's interesting. Yeah, he didn't come to mind when I was rattling off those names.
And he's obviously better than most of the guys that we're mentioning.
So good.
But he doesn't have that quality. And maybe that's because his brilliance is physical. And all of their brilliance is physical and mental in different ways, but there's something about his that to me is a little bit different. And Kawhi is an interesting case too, because he's not a great passer, but there is still something about like, okay, Kawhi's about to go to work and get it done.
Yeah,
and he can do it.
It's like Herculean. It is something that doesn't happen that often, and I don't know why we have so many good players on this level right now. But Luka in his second year doing this is just like, this is kind of awesome. I don't know. Watching him go off and hit that shot, there's a sense of theatrics that I really like hunt for, like a little stat hunter for theatrics. And like Luka has this timing, this dramatic timing that I really enjoy. And it might be the type of shot he hits, but even players who are ethical and dunk basketballs for a living also have this timing. And it might be the moment, it might be manufactured in his favor, but he might create that moment himself. And to hear his coach talk about him in a way, being like, oh, he sees the game in 6D. It's what we always talk about here. He's a basketball genius, right?
Without question. And that's why it was so stunning to have him fall in the draft. And I don't want to belabor that point. Those sorry franchises have already paid the piper. Those GMs don't have jobs.
Yeah.
Yes. People have been fired for this decision already. Yeah. But it's also mystifying how people didn't believe it. Because all it took was like 10 minutes. And, I'm not a basketball scout. I don't really follow the draft. But I tell you what, if we go over to the courts and we sit on a bench and people start shooting around, I can tell you within 15 seconds if someone can ball. That doesn't mean it's the full sum, but I can tell you, oh, this guy's a scrub or this guy can ball. I can tell you in 15 seconds. Let me see 4 jumpers and how they dribble, and I'll tell you. And that's like our dribble bias theory, right? Mm-hmm. But Luka Doncic, you watch him for 10 minutes, the reads he makes, the passes he makes, the way that he, at 17 years old, will use his eyes to move a defender and then throw the ball to the wing. You're like, this guy gets it. He's unlocked how the court moves. His spatial understanding is next level. He doesn't have incredible athleticism, but that's okay. Because, to what I was saying earlier, he uses his kind of, solid midsection that's fueled by
Tank.
nachos. he uses his athleticism in a different way. And that's why Ben Simmons is such an enticing player too, because he can't shoot, but he uses his like hockey player physique, rugby player physique in a different way than other guards do, or at least other, primary distributors do. Same with Draymond Green. And that's the thing about Doncic. It doesn't matter if he's not a crazy athlete. And NBA scouts and GMs should have known that. That's something that's like 101. That you don't have to be an incredible athlete to be awesome at basketball.
And he is an
And on the other hand, he is, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, dribble
That,
bias. This is Michael Lewis stuff.
But
Yeah.
I'm saying he's dribble bias all day and they still missed it.
All day.
You can tell right off the bat. Like, this guy's a baller. He's the best player in Europe as a teenager. He's a baller for real. And be like, yeah, his arms aren't quite long enough. You know what? I don't think he can, do a windmill.
That's what I mean. He doesn't look like Michael Jordan. He's
right,
white.
But it's true, all those things. But I'm just like, you're an NBA GM.
I know, do your job.
You're making mistakes that, they made in White Men Can't Jump.
Yeah, Woody Harrelson taught us this lesson.
When you were betting on games over at the Venice courts,
Yeah.
this was. I thought we learned our lesson from betting against the white guy.
I believe in half love at first sight. I believe that with restaurants, people, cars, apartments to rent, artworks. I believe you fall in love at first sight. And then the second half to that end, you have to talk to the person. You have to find out how much the apartment costs. You have to find out if the car is reliable. And Luka, to me, to your point, was kind of half love at first sight. When he was in Europe, I was like, whoa, this guy looks like he's a baller. Let's do some research. You look through some stats. You sift through some nerd stuff like Ben Affleck and The Accountant. You look at more tape. You look at people criticize. You read articles about people criticizing them, naysayers. And you come out of it in 2 hours being like, he should be the number one overall pick, without a doubt.
I mean, even beyond the weirdness of trusting players' performances here in the U.S. against guys who are inferior and teenagers, as opposed to someone who is doing this against grown men in a far better league. That's just bizarre.
Yeah.
Beyond all that, we're in an era where you see guys like Jokic.
Yeah.
Steve Nash. We're still not dealing with, well, if the guy doesn't have a 1.5% larger wingspan, if he can't do this, I just don't get how you'd still be making those scouting errors. The other side of that coin is maybe someone like Ricky Rubio is overrated, but he's still been a good pro.
No, Ricky Rubio was rated. He's very good. He just gets hurt a
I'm
lot.
saying he was rated super highly, and maybe in some people's opinions he hasn't lived up to that. I'm not one of those people.
No, he's
I just
been
feel like
good.
basketball genius is obvious. Maybe Lonzo Ball. Maybe people looked at Luka and said, Lonzo didn't quite do it.
No.
But I still believe in Lonzo Ball too. I just believe in people who can uncode the game in front of them in real time. I just want them on my team.
Yeah, the BMM saying LOL, 2 teams passed on Tatum, Tobias Harris too. I'm like, Lonzo Ball should have been the number 1 pick. In a redraft, Lonzo Ball goes number 1. And to your point, because he sees the game in a unique way that I think is it's a harder quality to identify than a wingspan or tenacity. He's a genius.
Yeah, and Luka, especially being passed over by a team that was run by Vlade Divac, and Stojakovic is in the front office. Just, I know the reason apparently had something to do with not liking his father, but that's also just bizarre that you would be European players and not trust what was in front of your eyes.
I mean, the owner has
After being called soft,
Yeah.
being called, whatever stereotypes there were about Euros, to have the kind of self-hate that would turn you against Luka Doncic is just kind of inexplicable.
I mean, as an Asian man who hates other
that's
Asian
why
people.
he's out of his job.
Yeah, I get that feeling, man. I David Chang really gets my crow, but come on, when I look in the mirror, I'm just like,
This guy can't ball.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he doesn't know my experience, like he does not. But I kind of want to talk about Luka in the present, and where he's going maybe in the future, because he has the potential to be possibly one of the most popular players in our league, and I think he has the potential to create more of these moments because he has a good team and he has this kind of game. Like, what is his ceiling? Like, no one's ever going to be as good as LeBron James ever, but can he be somebody who, when LeBron retires in 10 years, can he carry that torch of the entire NBA on his back?
I don't know. We have never had, at least with me thinking of this briefly for a couple seconds, we've never had a foreign-born player, a guy with an accent who was the best player in the NBA. And I don't know that Luka will get there or not. That's hard to do. But we've never, it's on the table.
Yep.
We've never had a foreign player who is the best basketball player on the planet.
I mean, they don't have to be the best. Can they be the most popular? Like,
well, that's kind of what I'm. Okay, same deal. Like, I don't know that he can be because he has an accent. He's not from here.
I know, right? But like Giannis is pretty popular. I think.
He's pretty popular. Dirk was pretty popular. Nash was popular. It's you can do it, but to be like the most popular, to be an absolute superstar in the way that people like just react, I don't know.
Yeah, and LeBron James is an impossible standard because he's a unique example. It's not like James Harden is. He's kind of a household name, you know. Luka does Luka have to date someone famous to like cross over to pop culture?
Because we're talking about the same sense of wonder, perhaps, that like Steph Curry engendered.
Yeah.
But can he be as popular as Steph Curry? Probably not. Right?
I think that's safe to say.
As a Slovakian?
But he is white.
He is white.
Right? Like.
But does that help you as a basketball star? I actually don't know.
I don't know.
It definitely helps you if you're Steve Nash. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Like Eminem sold a zillion records and was like really acclaimed
Very good
because
rapper.
he was white.
Yes.
Super talented, great at writing, great at putting syllables together.
Oh my God.
Had
maybe the best.
Bonkers commercial success.
Yeah.
But still was never really viewed by like the hip hop community as being awesome.
True.
Like
True.
Respected, viewed as good, viewed as being very good at rapping, but never like loved in that way.
True.
I'm not saying rap and basketball are the same, but they are both primarily black art forms, like in our lifetime.
Yeah, I'm with that comparison.
So I don't know. Like, does it hurt LeBron James to be black as a star?
Yes.
Sure, there are racists, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to flip it the other way. Like, sure, there are certainly racists who do not like LeBron James because he stands for what he does by virtue of being a black man.
Stick to sports. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, like someone else said it, or maybe many people have said it, but the idea is that like being black is like innately political.
Yeah, I'm with that.
And so you're LeBron James, whether or not you even say anything, you're political.
Yeah, that is 100% true in my opinion. And yeah, I was texting with one of my buddies during a Mavs game, and he's like, "There's a lot of white guys on this team," and I was like, "I yes, that's correct, but like, I have a tough time talking about Kristaps and Luka as white because the world is so big, and a lot of these white European players have had really tough life stories, right? Like I just think of Enes Kanter a little bit. Like there's a bounty on his head. Like these are the world. America's huge and relatively young to the world. Like the life experiences Giannis has had are just very intense, right? And I think if you ask Nikola Vucevic what his life was like, I think it might surprise you. I don't know what he went through, but like, so it's complicated, and that's why we do a podcast about it.
I mean, I think with the Mavs, you're inevitably going to run into the things that, Mark Cuban has said, specifically when he was like, European players learn the fundamentals earlier at a young age, and Americans just want to make a mixtape and like dunk on you or, whatever, taunt you, whatever he said. And that kind of thing is just too loaded. It sounds like too much of a dog whistle, even if you give him the benefit of the doubt that that's not what he was trying to do. It wasn't racial. It was about, let's just say, that there should be pro leagues for 15-year-olds in the United States, and then they could learn these like fundamental skills that Euros have. However you wanted to read that charitably. It's tough to hear something like that and then look at the Mavs roster and see a bunch of white dudes and not put two and two together and be like, something's going on here.
Right.
Like you're not going to get away with that.
And like, it's funny, like the price that Mark Cuban paid to assemble these two players, Kristaps and Luka, was tanking the rights to Trae Young and Dennis Smith Jr. Like, every single team would do that.
Crazy. And without getting too in the weeds, the fact that Luka only makes like $8 million for the next 2 years, like they have such an opportunity to bring in like Giannis or whoever is next up.
Yep.
Because if you have Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, again, maybe they'll get no one.
Yeah. And
they'll still be a really tough team if they put the parts together. But salary-wise, they have so much flexibility because, for one, Porzingis is only on his rookie max, which is very different from being on like your second like mega max. So he's not even making that much compared to, say, Tobias Harris, future Nick. But Doncic making no money and being, a top 10, top 5 player, wherever you want to put him in that hierarchy, it's like a cartoonish competitive advantage.
Yeah, and they got to strike while that iron's hot, because when he's a free agent, he's definitely going right to MSG. And I kind of want to talk about the Knicks, the only team that matters in relegation, because if they play their cards right, they're going to get Ben Simmons, Luka Doncic, and LaMelo Ball. That's pretty interesting, right?
Knicks basketball, baby.
So I've been kind of sparring with my Knicks buddies about what happened the other night at the lottery. Knicks come up with the big eight breed. More love, less 8. And I think
8 is enough.
It didn't bother me because it's, first of all, very funny, and second of all, they won 4 of their last 10 games, and the probability of them getting 4 and 8 were the same. So it didn't end up the Knicks' way, and 8 was in the cards. But how is that surprising? Because they went in there. This is kind of a mellow draft. There's nothing to like. I think. No, that was no pun intended. But I think LaMelo Ball is an apex player, but he's gone at 1. If you don't have number 1, it's everybody else in him. If he falls, like Luka, that's going to be really intriguing. But the Knicks aren't the Knicks that people dog them for. They have all their rookie contracts. They have, we've argued about this before, but trying to get a rise out of me from the Knicks is like, this is different than 2010.
Can't shake nihilist Knicks fan quo. You're just here listening to Mudvayne and living your best life. You can't get you excited.
Well, this is almost the opposite of nihilism if it's Mudvayne related, right? Like, I think this is the pure dark joy of it. And
it's true. You're staring at Randall's.
I think the Knicks are in a place that is going to be fun. They're going to make a move.
Well, that's what I think. So, everyone's like, the Knicks are cursed. Well, they're obviously not cursed. You make your own luck. But they did get unlucky here.
Yeah, slightly.
Like that's a fact. They dropped as much as you possibly could have, right?
I think so. I think they could have gone lower, maybe. They won a lot of games.
I don't think so, right? I think you only draft the top 3, and then the rest fall into line. So them dropping 3 spots from, I believe 5th to 8th is like as bad as it gets.
Maybe I gotta check again.
I think something like that.
Yeah.
So bad luck. I think this hurts the Knicks a lot more than other teams, though. And I understand why fans would be a little distraught because you look at Minnesota getting the top pick and you're like, well, you already have Karl Anthony Towns. You already have D'Angelo Russell. You have Okobo. You have Malik Beasley. Like, you have some parts. You have some pieces. You know what you are. And you look at a team, like Golden State. Well, like, this is bullshit. You have 4 Hall of Famers, 3 Hall of Famers on your team. Like, you don't need this pick. And the Knicks' problem right now, and I'm putting myself in the Knicks, steel-toed boots, is that they don't know who they are. I know this is like weird and existential, but I think that's where the Knicks are at this point because they've just brought in Thibs, who's not like a player development dude. He's a let's win. Let's play veterans. Let's Taj Gibson it out. You've brought in all these guys, Worldwide West, people from all over the place with relationships. Oh, guys from Kentucky. You're a developmental coach from this guy. You worked with him in the past. Like, the Knicks assembled their Voltron front office. And I don't think they have a lot of appetite for taking a moderate prospect, 8th in the draft, waiting 2 years, and seeing what they have. All right, we'll reevaluate you in 2023, kid. Good luck. I just don't think they have the stomach for that.
Except
and
they've
even
done exactly that, right?
No, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. I think they've done it, and I think they're over it.
Oh, I mean,
because what they're looking at right now, their portfolio, they're like, all right, what do we got? What do we have to show for this patience, for holding on to our draft picks and taking our guys and trying to play some young dudes? What do we got to hold? And you're like, Kevin Knox, R.J. Barrett, Frankie Smokes,
and you're forgetting,
just
but you're forgetting the best player of the bunch.
I mean, I love Mitchell Robinson, but they don't even start him.
Yeah, but they know what they have in him, and I think to your previous point, I have a life kind of belief that if you're searching for an identity, you said, true, like the Knicks don't know who they are, but like luck, like you said before that, you create your own luck, and the identity is in the individual. I don't believe in context framing an individual. So if Mitchell Robinson ends up being an all-star, that's their identity. They don't have to create the identity around him. So it's always about the player and not the box the player goes in.
I'm more trying to speak from the Knicks' point of view versus my own thoughts on like what the Knicks should do. I'm saying if I'm the Knicks and I'm looking over at Brooklyn and they've got a playoff team, Karis LeVert has looked great in the bubble, even though they have not been winning games. Durant and Kyrie are going to come back. That's a lot of star power. That's a really good team potentially.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's a contender. No matter
if they're healthy, yeah. Like
right, if they're healthy.
And there's a lot of risk there too, but I hope they will be a contender.
I'm still speaking as like Ben Dietrich, the Knick. And I'm like, wow, you guys have 2 stars coming who we wanted to come here. You're going to have a good team. And I'm looking in the mirror and saying, are we team Kevin Knox, Frankie Smokes? Because we've been doing that. And I'm looking at like our 8th picks in recent history. I'm like, oh, okay, we got Frankie Smokes, Jordan Hill, Channing Frye, looking around at other ones. All right, Jackson Hayes, Prom King, Colin Sexton, Marquise Chris, Stanley Johnson, Nick Stauskas. And I'm like, fuck. Fuck this. I think the Knicks are absolutely going to try to package stuff together to get like a Zach LaVine. And that's why I'm saying getting the 8th pick really stung because I think it forces their hand. If they got 1 or 2, they could say, we're getting a young guy that we're going to build around. I think at 8, you start saying, all right, we're going to package this with other guys, maybe future picks, because we need a tent pole. We need a dude that's our guy. This is the behavior that got them Melo and made them sign Amare and trade for Marbury. That's why I think it's cyclical. I think they ran out of steam on this the same way they did with Walsh's rebuild.
So you're saying getting a number 1 or number 2 pick is better than number 8?
It's controversial as it counts. I'm saying for the Knicks, I think it's going to inform their strategy more, where they might have been happy taking LaMelo Ball and saying, let's go young, let's do it. But with 8, I just don't think they're excited about it.
So this kind of like, and we'll talk about the Sixers, but this sounds like a tune the BMM sings about the Sixers, because the difference is the Knicks are not good. They are not a good organization or team. The Sixers are good at playing basketball, but they have a bad organization. And the silent BMM in the Philadelphia, the media circles kind of sing this tune that sounds about right. And I think Knicks criticism sings this tune that sounds about right. But the variables are very different. And I think I agree, hiring Leon Rose, hiring anybody new, that person is going to do something to define themselves, to prove their worth. And I do think there's a chance that this pick would be flipped for a Zach LaVine. But, I don't know. Maybe it's not enough. A number 8 isn't enough for Chicago, and someone's willing to give them more, like the Golden State Warriors at 2. This could be great because this prevents us. I don't know what's going to happen, but being in the lottery is not a Knicks thing. The fact that we've had 3 lottery picks in a row is bad, but it's very good because usually we have Andreas Bargnani.
For sure. I'm only speculating because of their previous history, that there's a term of limitations, and that might be up considering the kind of people they've hired and just the natural kind of wandering eye of what happened with Brooklyn last offseason. And we know Dolan takes these kind of things to heart.
Yeah, but he's learning slowly, or a broken clock is right twice. But, he tanked for Zion, and they didn't get Zion or Ja. And I think he, to your point, is we did this last year. We should try to win these games. Culture is important. Free agents are going to want to go to a team that's winning, which is not true. But, and that's why the Knicks are stuck at number 8, because they won a few too many games.
And again, back to the part about the Knicks being unlucky, when they first shifted the lottery odds, people didn't really buy it that much. And then you ended up having the Pelicans leap to the front and get Zion. So everyone kind of thought, it doesn't matter anymore, right? I mean, anyone can win it. The lottery odds don't matter.
Oh, the odds
and then this
matter
year,
so
the teams
much.
that tanked the most ended up getting the top picks.
Yeah.
Because they still do have, obviously, a mathematical advantage. If you had flip-flopped these results, I think the Knicks would have been more diligent about losing games. But no one kind of focused on it except for Golden State.
It's like karma. Where do you begin your idea of karma? And where's your starting point with probability? Because the odds are flattened, but from where? If you look at it in a vacuum, the odds are still heavily favoring teams that lose games.
And the Knicks did what they were supposed to do, karma-wise. They went out there, they spent their money. They got Randall, the best young guy who would come to the Knicks. Or, you know what I'm saying. They went out and identified a guy they liked, and they went and got him. He's pretty young, and he's okay.
2 years.
They went out and got veterans. Okay, we're going to try to win games. We're going to try to win an 8th seed. We suck. Too bad. Karmically, Knicks did all the right things to deserve that number 1 pick, and instead kicked in the teeth.
Well,
I'm saying karmically, though.
Yeah.
By this idea that, you try to win, and, we won't punish you, if you're not that bad.
Well, yeah, which is my point about karma, because just rewind a year before they signed a Pordai or a Morai, and they are not karmically it just doesn't matter, right? And that's where the nihilism may come in. I don't believe in winning culture. I just believe in good players and good front offices. The Knicks getting number 8 is kind of enticing because after LaMelo, and I'm not going to run through the KBB, there's 2 point guards that will fall to 8. Killian Hayes and Tyrese Halliburton. That's all we want.
I don't know anything about them, but go off.
They're good enough. This draft is full of Keith Van Horns. I think Dennis Avila, I'm not into. Weissman, I'm not into. And those guys are going to be gobbled up at 3 or 4 or 5, So I'm really into Hayes and Halliburton. So given the field, there's stuff to be done. And if they want to trade that pick for Ben Simmons, then we'll take Ben Simmons.
Deal.
It's gonna happen.
So yeah, little Sixers chat here. So they've been eliminated from the bubble. They've been booted from the burger bubble after a 4-game sweep at the hands of the hated Beantown Brawlers, the Celtics. I didn't enjoy this series at all. I found it an enormous drag, even though 2 of the 4 games came down to the last 30 seconds, the last minute. I thought Philly played pretty hard. They are just a tough team to watch without Ben Simmons.
You cannot gild the lily. Is that the right way to use it? It was gross. Those 4 games, I was like, I love this team. They don't really have a shot without their top 3 player. That said, super gross. Boston took them. That's it.
I frankly didn't even think Boston looked good. It just looked to me like a team that. Oh, they were certainly better. Yeah. It just looked to me like a team that
they're beatable.
I mean, as I said, to see the Sixers look that bad at basketball and play them to a standstill in 2 of the first 3 games, and then the first 3 quarters of Game 4. Granted, motivations change on the where the series is at. Like obviously the Celtics aren't playing with the same urgency up 3-0 that they would be in a different situation. But I think the Celtics are good. I do think Hayward's passing and kind of reluctance to shoot was missing a bit from the Celtics. He got hurt, and I want to say in Game 1. And they mostly have a lot of guys who are looking to score themselves. And I think Boston's offense didn't look that crisp to me. It was a ton of guys just going for themselves. And Hayward, as kind of like a disappointing alpha, turned into like a kind of good beta, was sort of missing from their attack. But whatever the case, Philly just couldn't score.
Yeah, the Celtics were just tuning up for the next series against the Sixers. The resistance was there at times, but they were just getting their chops in, man.
I mean, the thing is, I do believe that Philly with Ben Simmons beats the Celtics because they beat him 3 out of 4 times during the regular season.
Well, he's a top 3 player, so like you take a top player out of any team, you take Vucevic off the Magic, and they don't have a shot.
I mean, if you look at specifically the areas in which Philly was particularly abysmal, just embarrassingly bad, it was like all the shit that Ben Simmons does.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Jason Tatum, we have no one to guard him. Well, Ben Simmons guarded him more than anyone in the entire NBA this year.
Creating points. Ben Simmons.
And Tatum shot 31% against Simmons in more minutes than any other defender. That matters.
The Sixers are Hillary Clinton. They're kingmakers. They made Tatum into a bona fide star.
Right. Oh, God, he's so boring.
He is not. I'm glad Luka is transcending all the rest of these guys because Tatum is boring. And this is not just my Boston bias, which I have, but I like Marcus Smart so much. I love Kemba Walker. Tatum seems like an awesome kid, and he's got a big smile, but like his game has got nothing for me, man.
Same. It sounds like I'm just hating on Tatum, but I actually like everyone else on the Celtics.
Awesome.
I think Jaylen Brown is sick. I've loved Kemba since UConn. I think Smart is fantastic, and I actually thought the Sixers would end up with him.
Yeah.
In that,
oh my God.
In that draft, because I thought Embiid would get taken ahead of him, and then they would take Smart at 3. So I love all those dudes. There's something about Tatum. It's like these vectors of shit that irritates me. It's not only the Beantown hype, which is just deafening.
Yeah, it's
like the entire game is just fellatio. It's just sorry to be crude. It's just outrageous. It's every minute of the game, everything he does, and like, yeah, he's good player. He's a good standard third tier wing. He's good.
He's so Knicksian. He's such a Knick, man. Just like
he gets the ball, he does a bunch of jab steps, he hits a fadeaway, and people are like, oh, he's so gifted. I'm like,
it's some Allen Houston shit.
I'm like, that shit kind of sucked, man.
Yeah, no, man. Like, I'm not just being a jerk about the BMM. It's just like when the Knicks featured this type of player, it was a bummer. Yeah, optically he's no fun. His game is no fun. There's no creativity there.
But it's also we look for other stuff because optically, some people clearly love Jason Tatum.
True,
They're like,
true.
this is so cool. I love the way he did that jab step and a fadeaway. That's so awesome to me.
Yeah, true.
To me, I like Jason Tatum when he comes right off a screen and pulls a three.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, oh, he got 9 threes off. That's tough to guard.
Yeah.
Someone who will take 9 threes,
Yeah.
hit him at a good clip, but like aggressively look for those threes. Like I fuck with that.
Mm-hmm,
Like I'm into it. But like not great at finishing, not great at drawing fouls, settles for like shitty mid-range jumpers. He's not for me.
Yeah, and I hope. I mean, I want to talk about the Sixers more, but I hope he gets some resistance. Kyle Lowry being hurt is a big bummer because Kyle Lowry is an unsung superstar, and Siakam is great too. But I love Fred VanVleet. Your boy, Foot Boy, got Coach of the Year.
Future Nick. Fred VanVleet, max out, baby.
I would do it. Whatever. I like him so much.
He's good. He's cool. He's got a good beard.
It's very expensive
Little.
at the max, but it's better than Andrew Wiggins. But anyway,
I'd much rather have him at the max than Tobias Harris.
yeah, yes.
Like not even close. Not even close.
I mean, if the Sixers get a Brogdon or a Fred VanVleet type player, you guys are good to go. So I want to ask you, Sixers dude, your team's so frustrating to me, and I feel your pain. What are we looking at? What do you want? What do you expect to see happen, and what do you want to see happen?
The writing on the wall seems clear that they're going to fire Brett Brown. Not to belabor how stupid that is. I mean, I
like
understand it. I mean, I understand it. People are frustrated.
It's time.
But see, I disagree with the idea that it's time. It makes no sense at all to fire him
Sure.
now. It's just like the clamor
But you expect
of
it,
noise.
right?
And yeah, that's what it is, right? Like, it's time to fire Brett Brown. But it's just this din of cretins who've been yelling for Brett Brown's firing for years, and now they've kind of seized the upper hand, and they're so noisy that it dominates the conversation. So even people who are reasonable and don't think Brett Brown should really be fired are just like, all right, it's time. Okay, let's just move on because I don't want to hear your voice. I don't want you drowning out every other Sixers conversation with your like screeching about how Brett Brown doesn't have the right rotations.
Well,
it's like
the funny.
I just want you to go away. So fine, Brett, you're fired.
The funny thing is, like, when we were talking about the Knicks, you were saying it's just a cyclic pattern of what they're going through. The Sixers are the cyclic pattern, right? Because this is the time when front offices hear fans and fire coaches who are good. This is just procedural at this point.
I think that's correct. And this is the next step for the Sixers front office, right?
Hopefully.
Well, I mean, if they keep their front office intact, that would just be
Bonkers.
disastrous. Just absolutely disastrous.
It's
That would be, it would be insane. Doesn't mean they won't do it, but it would be insane. Because look, the same guys have been in the room for every bad decision over the last 4 years. Same guys. There's no line of demarcation between Colangelo and Brand. Same people, same crew. You know, Elton Brand was brought in by Jerry to be on the Sixers as a mentor to Jaleel and then brought into the G League organization by Brian. Like, these are all the same people. Like, there may be different faces, but for the most part, it's literally the same people with, like, a different meat shield attached.
they did get
So,
Jimmy,
like,
though.
That was a good move.
Yeah.
And then they fucked it up.
Yes, they
So,
did.
like, all these things, like, well, 5 Ball's a pretty good pick. Yeah, but you tipped your hand
Yeah.
to Boston, and they were able to ransom him to you. They do these things all the time. And I find it pretty fruitless to try to look through their transactions and say, oh, well, they got this one right, so maybe we can give them a chance. You know, everyone here plays fantasy sports. The worst guy in your league makes the right pick a couple times.
Of course.
You know, the worst basketball player in the NBA shoots like 30%. Not to say that it's exactly the same.
Kevin
but,
Knox,
like,
baby.
if you make a bunch of decisions over the course of several years, you're going to get a couple right. Even if you're a smart guy like Sam Hinkie, you'll take Jahlil Okafor sometimes. You'll make a wrong move.
Yowza.
Maybe a trade that you made where you thought this asset would be worth a lot ends up not being worth so much later. All those things happen. You know, this is how decision making works. So when people say, "Yeah, but Jimmy Butler is good," well, yeah, but these are human beings. they were presented with the chance to trade for an all-star. So they went and did it. You know, like, I can't give them that much credit for that move, even though I believe it was a good trade, because then they later bungled it. So to me, it's just like, there's so much stuff. Like signing Mike Scott to a 2-year deal. Why? Why would you do that? Like, that made no sense. They just did these kind of things over and over and over, like the overpaying for Tobias Harris, then maxing him out, letting Jimmy go, the Al Horford thing. Everything makes no sense.
Letting
And then
Fultz
Mike
go
Scott,
is so stupid.
just all of it. All of it was just bullshit.
But let's talk about the present. What do you think? Where do they go from here? Future, maybe.
So there's a lot of doomsday, apocalyptic talk about the Sixers. The process is over. That's it.
No, the process worked. We don't have to relitigate that. A plus.
That's right. I agree. So I'll move on from that. But yeah, like, what are we even talking about? The process ended when Sam Hinkie was demoted and resigned. That was the end of the process.
And it yielded 2 Hall of Famers. Like, that's pretty good.
Cool, right? That was good. He was there for 2.5 years, and he got him 2 Hall of Famers. We good?
Yeah.
We straight? Okay. And Robert Covington.
Yeah.
Like, okay, good enough. Jeremy Grant, does that work for you?
Yeah.
Is that not enough? TJ McConnell. Oh, okay. Now I believe you. TJ McConnell.
Dario Saric. Like, it,
Yeah, it's a joke. It's
A
a joke.
plus. Yeah,
Yeah, A plus. Arguably the greatest GM who's ever lived.
I agree.
If you gave him 2.5 years, and that's what he came up with. Imagine if you gave Sam Hinkie 7. Imagine if Sam Hinkie got the same time that Rob Hannigan got in Orlando or Ryan McDonough got in Phoenix. Sam Hinkie got 2.5 years, and you ended up with 2 Hall of Fame players. Robert Covington, a defensive first-team guy on one of
Love
the
him.
best contracts in the NBA. Jeremy Grant, who also ended up being on one of the better contracts in the NBA. Rashawn Holmes, whatever. Again,
Assets to get
now
Jimmy
now I'm
Butler.
just
Yeah.
it's insane. It's insane. And like a bunch of first rounders. Anyhow, where I was going with that, though, is that the Sixers aren't doomed at all. They are doomed if they keep their current front office, because those guys could not take a better situation and turn it into trash and then take a tougher situation and fix it. They are not capable. They can't do it. You can't just give like a panda bear a knife and say, fix this. You can't do it. It's a panda bear, man.
Shout out to Noah.
You know, it's like the Sixers front office can't fix this.
Yeah.
Everything they do, they screw up. How are they going to take a worse situation and improve it? They can't do it. They don't know anything. They can't identify talent. They're lazy. They're terrible at this. They got it 2 years to really run a team, and they blew it. It's okay, man. It happens. You tried to run an NBA team and you weren't cut out for it.
So what do you want to see happen?
Shit happens. So to me, all the Sixers need is to hire a real GM. Hire someone who's smart, who knows what they're doing. Hire, the GM from Toronto, who's under Ujiri.
Mm-hmm.
His name just eludes me. At the
Isaiah
moment.
Thomas is available.
But hire Sachin. He was working in the organization under Sam Hinkie. Everyone still likes him. Like, good guy. He's up for the Sacramento Kings GM position. Hire Mike Zarin.
Yeah.
They already interviewed him. There's all these good guys around. Hire the team president from Miami. Like, there's good people all over the place. And if they want to fire Brett Brown and they want to bring in their new coach, cool. It's their team. Let them do it and get out of the way. Stop letting the corporate side of the team make decisions. Let a basketball dude who is good at this and qualified decide how to run a team. This like cosplay suits running a team as like human fantasy basketball has to end, or it will end in dismal failure.
Well, talk about eyes wandering, right? Like the Knicks discussion mirrors the Sixers discussion eerily because they hired Sam Hinkie, the GOAT. They're the ones that let Sam Hinkie do his thing for 2.5 years. And then they were like, that didn't work. And their eyes wandered, being like, there must be a better way to do this. Like, no, you had the right car. You don't have to level up or level out of the car that is taking you places. And I agree with you. But does management have the same vision? The management kind of reminds me of James Dolan.
I don't think there's too many differences at this point between the Sixers front office and ownership And the Knicks front office and ownership, except the Knicks are far more experienced. And the Knicks have better basketball people. People who have at least proven themselves within the basketball world. The guys running the Sixers have no experience. They have no credibility. They have no track record. They've never worked for other teams particularly. Like, they were just installed. They're guys who were Colangelo minions, from half of them from the NBA offices. They have literally no resume. I mean, at least Leon Rose has been in the game.
Worldwide, Wes.
You know?
He's not.
I'm saying, like, I wouldn't necessarily hire those guys to run my team, but they've been in the game.
It's funny.
All the dudes they've brought in are reputable.
So, to our Sixers fans listening on Patreon, thank you for subscribing. I know I don't want to put you on the spot, but, like, can you incorporate some names into these takes? Like, are there players out there? I mean, this is what we want to talk about, right? It's a tough spot to be in, right?
Well, I'd rather approach it like this. To me, everyone says, oh, you just got to dump Tobias Harris's contract. You got to dump Al Horford's contract. You got to make a trade. You go, all right, give up some assets and Thibault to trade Horford for this shooting guard. Man, you don't have to do all that shit.
I'll run it back.
Just chill out. Yeah. Chill out. Get someone who's willing to do the work. Someone who's willing to do what Sam Hinkie did, what they do in Toronto, what they do in Miami, what they do in San Antonio, what they do in Houston, which is to start breaking out the gold pan and start mining. Go find yourself some players.
That's tough,
you
man.
Could have had,
those are some great GMs,
tough.
though.
They are. That's true. But you got to go get a good one.
Yeah.
You know? You could have had Ben McLemore. He was available to anyone. You could have had him. Just a solid little 3-and-D guard, chucks up shots, gives the ball back to your star. Could have had him.
Could have just kept Markelle Fultz.
I mean, but Fultz has his own set of problems. He can't fucking shoot.
Yeah, but like, Jonathan Simmons really helped the Sixers.
Yes. I mean, Fultz just doesn't work with what the Sixers need right now. He would have been cool off the bench, but he's also not that good.
Yeah, but
my point is, we don't need those. There are flawed and missed opportunities along the way, all over the place. I'm mostly saying, going forward right now, they don't need to do bold moves. That's how they're going to get themselves in more trouble.
Oh, but beware of people of action. Yep.
Because that's what's going to happen, right? They'll go over and someone will just take them to the fucking cleaners to get rid of that Al Horford contract.
Oh, Leon Rose, let's go.
Guess what? Al Horford wasn't the problem.
No, he was not.
But now the Sixers think he is, and the fans hate him. So what do? They'll attach like a first rounder and Thibault and something, or Richardson, just to get Horford off the table. Except the fact that Horford isn't the problem.
Horford had a neutral series. His game log is neutral.
The thing is, Horford with Ben Simmons put up basically the same numbers that he did in Boston. He just can't play with Embiid. Horford is what I always said he was. He was a luxury backup. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is. Here's the thing, though. Horford's contract gets better and better because his final year, he's only guaranteed half his money. Yeah. So, like, you can get out of that contract after next season without too much of a headache. It's only a year and a half. So, like, for them to try to dump it now in a panic, that's the exact move that this front office will do. They will attach assets and rampantly try to dump Al Horford to whoever will take him and give them back a mediocre guard.
Well, it's going to be.
They're going to do that.
It's going to be a domino effect, and kind of exactly what we're talking about with the Knicks. If there is a new GM, which there should be, there will be a domino effect. All these dominoes are arranged differently, so we won't know enough until we find out if they want to hire a new GM and who that GM is. At that point, we have a better grasp of like what a long view may be, hypothetically, you know. But it's hard. You're right. Horford and Tobias Harris aren't the problem. Not having a ball handler and shooters was the problem, and that you can add those at a reasonable price if you're smart.
That's all I'm saying, right? Yeah. You get someone who's willing to do the work. The Sixers have the 21st pick in the draft. They also have, I want to say, 2 of the top 5 picks in the second round. You might be able to get out of a contract, but maybe that contract is Mike Scott. Maybe that's the contract you use those 2 second rounders or one of those second rounders to get out of. I'm not saying don't, try to get out of contracts, but let's not worry about the big ones.
Yeah.
Maybe. This is just for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not about dumping Tobias. Maybe it's not about dumping Al Horford. Yeah. Maybe it's about getting rid of Mike Scott and getting back your exception. Mm-hmm. And now you've got $5 million to spend. You can go get someone. And it's not Alec Burks, because that's exactly the kind of mistake that this front office will do.
That was a bummer.
They gave up 2 picks for Alec Burks. He played okay in the bubble. He sucked in the playoffs, but like, okay, he can shoot. He can handle the ball. Yeah, he's our guy now. It's not Mike Scott. It's Alec Burks. Like, this is the kind of dumb shit that the Sixers will do.
Some Lance Thomas
They won't
shit.
go out and find a Lou Dort.
I love Dort.
Lou Dort.
Love Dort.
But they won't go do that. They won't take the time and the effort to find pieces that can actually get slipped into your starting rotation. Because if you found a 3-and-D guy off the scrap heap, and you found, someone who can just kind of shoot a little bit or handle the ball, if you could find those guys without being lazy and stupid, then you could say, okay, Jay Rich, we're going to deal you off for like a shooter. We're going to put Al on the bench as an overpaid 5, then also an insurance in case Embiid gets hurt. And all of a sudden your team's a lot better. You're just a lot better. You're like, oh, this makes sense now. Joe, Ben, maybe Shake, maybe a 3-and-D guy, Tobias. Okay, all right, this is an NBA team. This is a team that makes sense. And then you just finesse the roster until you get around to the playoffs. But again, this is what a real GM does, not a bunch of casuals.
I agree. I mean, and however logical that sounds to me, that's a tough ask for businessmen sitting in their chairs being like, if I was doing this, I would have this solved this way and that way. Like,
I know.
Moving on from Tobias Harris will be a luxury and should be investigated, but like he's still not your problem. And I agree. All these good teams that we see, and this is like LeBron James might be good enough to win it all, but Rob Pelinka did not surround him with the Dorts and the players who kind of make their mark in the playoffs, right? What's the thing about the Dellavedovas, the Boobie Gibsons, the things that these superstars need?
Of course. And that's, if you look at the guys that the Sixers have brought in and developed over the last 4 years since Sam Hinkie left, there's not one contributor, not a single one, who was an undrafted free agent that they brought up, that they identified, they put through the G League, and they turned into a player. Like Shake Milton, he was a second-round draft pick, but, he's useful. He's starting.
like him.
But that just shows you how it can be done. And all these guys that you're referring to, the Lou Dorts, the
Danny Green's when he was like doing his thing.
yeah, and on the Rockets house, these guys are all over
Eddie
the
House
place.
is nice. Yeah.
I mean, your boy on the Miami Heat, was he even drafted? Shooter?
Duncan Robinson,
Yeah.
I believe he was not drafted. I have to check. But yeah, and I don't know.
Sixers in 4 years, not one undrafted guy, not one. Yeah, Duncan Robinson was not drafted. These guys are out there.
Yes.
Sixers, not one.
Well,
Four fucking years, man. That's just laziness. It's just smug, arrogant laziness.
do you have a voodoo doll with a Mr. Peanut likeness on it? Because I think Zaire was an interesting, and there's haters in Philly who sing the praises of Mikal Bridges, and that's a whistle to the perceived mistake that they made on that draft day trade. Zaire was intriguing, and he almost died, and I'm glad he did not, to say the least.
Trading Zaire, or I'm sorry, trading the pick that Bridges went for Zaire and a future first was a no-brainer.
I like Zaire so much, and Mikal Bridges is not that awesome.
But also, to what you just said, Zaire almost died.
Yeah, dude.
I don't understand this. I don't understand what Philly fans do a lot. I gotta be frank.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. I'm like, your brain operates slightly different. I don't understand your priorities.
Do you think?
like
Do you think you have an
fury?
Yeah.
The fury towards Zaire. Oh, he's a wash. Well, he almost died.
Yeah.
So last season doesn't count. So this was his rookie year. This is a guy who's played some college ball for 1 year, a little bit in the G League since high school, and he was drafted as a project, and he's over 2 years younger than Thibault.
Yeah.
Looked at his G League numbers. Shot better from 3 than anyone in the Sixers starting lineup.
Zaire's
I mean, I don't know that he'll be a baller, but this idea to say, yeah, this 20-year-old kid who almost died came back and made like some serious improvements
his sizzle reel
in his
nice.
3-point shooting. and is a fantastic athlete,
Can dunk out of the.
why would you
arena.
give up on him? So that's what I'm worried about, right? They'll dump Zaire and a future first and Horford to get someone who's like not as good plus a shit contract.
I know. Just take a Magic player. I don't know. But I was gonna ask.
I mean, it's Buddy Hield. That's
Oh
like,
my God.
because everything they do is so predictable. It's Buddy Hield. That's the predictable move. Is like getting taken to the cleaners by the Kings' new front office.
Respect your elders, man. He's gonna turn 51 soon. Put some respect on Budrick Heel's name.
And it'll be one of those deals where everyone says, well, sure, the Sixers gave up too much, but, like, it's a better fit. And they'll be right. And it might help the Sixers in the short term, but they'll get hosed. Like, we just know this is going to happen. They're going to get raked over the coals in a deal because they suddenly want to get out of an unpopular contract and get themselves a guard and a shooter. They're going to get torched.
I think about Rayo's spaghetti sauce a little bit when we're talking about this, because they were my favorite jarred sauce for a while. So good. It was rich. It was round tasting. It felt like it took hours to make each batch, and it was worth the $10 retail that they were charging for it.
Would you say you were lost in the sauce?
I was lost in the sauce. My favorite for years. And then they sold it, and it kind of got a little tart for me, but it's still holding on to it. So where I'm going is I still buy Rayo's sauce. What Hinkie did in Philly was phenomenal. I think that should put him in the Hall of Fame, maybe. I don't know. Whatever. That sounds outrageous. But I think what he did was transform the way we think about management in the workplace and efficiency and outside of basketball even. And I think we are holding on to the treasures he has bestowed upon the Philly organization. We're gripping them. Like, I go to the grocery store and I'm like, I look at the jar and I'm like, how long can we hold on to Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, who are what I think of when I think of this generation of the Sixers? And they're slowly dismantling the thing that Hinkie made. And it's a slow process, but it's so inevitable. It's like,
And the next part of that is Brett Brown.
Yeah.
And I do find it ironic that people who will now howl with rage at this front office are now also infuriated by the guy that Sam Hinkie personally handpicked and chose to run his rebuild. Like, that's an important decision. That's something that Sam Hinkie put a ton of thought into. That was like the biggest deal for him. And he's like Brett Brown. This is Sam Hinkie.
Yeah.
The guy that we were lauding as like the Lord and Savior, the greatest GM of all time. He thought Brett Brown was the right guy because he identified Brett Brown as the best possible coach for this team. And there were other values in there about patience and player development and young guys that may not be as relevant to this current period of time where they're trying to desperately scrape together a contender. But still, if we're talking about Sam Hinkie being the Lord and Savior, why would you be so eager to think that Brett Brown is clueless, that he doesn't know what he's doing? Because the evidence doesn't show that. And like, do I think he'll get fired? Yeah, probably. But the Sixers had the best net rating among starting lineups 2 years ago. They were among the best last year. They had the best in the playoffs last year.
it's a personnel
Like,
issue.
what are we? Right. Like, what are we talking about? You think Brett Brown forgot how to coach?
Yeah,
They had a top 5 defense this year, despite having really no guards when Simmons and Embiid were still playing. Like, what are we doing?
your blind spot is clear. You just can't imagine the hand down, man down dominance that Philly's looking towards in the future. Mama, there goes that man on the sidelines for you.
Mark Jackson and add some necessary religion to that locker room.
Finally, Pitbull on our sidelines. This will fix
We need some
everything.
accountability around here. You know, like, if Ben Simmons doesn't shoot a 3, he should be benched. Like, just bench his ass, you know? Joel Embiid, if he takes a 3, bench his ass too. The only guy who gets to do what he wants is Tobias.
I mean,
Tobias, you know, like, he does what he wants. The other guys bench him all.
I think Kenny Atkinson is an awesome coach, and I think
He'd be great.
He was done dirty in Brooklyn, I think. Very dirty, probably. But I also don't think he can do anything with this personnel situation.
Of course not. I've interviewed both of them. They are fantastic. They're the same person. Like, they're honestly the same person.
Interesting.
They are guys who value best possible shots, don't like mid-range jumpers, are great for player development, believe in modern basketball. They're exactly the same. Brett Brown was just headlocked into playing this regressive style of play because the front office is clueless. Like Brett Brown 2-3 years ago, the Sixers had the most high-value shot chart in the league except for the Rockets. They ran a ton. They took threes. They led the league in passing. They didn't take mid-range jumpers. Well, things change when all of a sudden you have Joel Embiid. Okay, we got to figure out a way to get him his shots because he loves mid-range jumpers. Well, Tobias Harris, he's a big mid-range guy. Oh, Josh Richardson, mid-range guy. Like, what do you want Brett Brown to do, dude?
I know.
He said it publicly. I can't get Tobias Harris and Josh Richardson to understand the space that they have. I can't do it. They have to let it fly. He told them this. He said it to the media. But they still don't do it. Tobias Harris, what did he make? 1 3-pointer in the playoff series?
Did he? Is that right?
Yeah, it's like, I think it was 1 of 10, 1 of 11.
Agent Net Zero. I love him.
At least he's okay. He took a really hard fall.
Yeah, I was terrified, man. That looked terrible. The way his body was still like contorted in that way was horrifying, dude.
He's a good guy. I'm glad he's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, that doesn't mean that, to your point earlier, that if someone who plays in, I don't know, the mecca of basketball wasn't interested in bringing him home, and unloading a bunch of young players and assets and is willing to do whatever it takes to get Tobias Harris into the Garden, I might listen.
Listen, if it takes Tobias Harris to bring Simmons to MSG to enforce the dunker spot, let's do it. I'm coming home.
I'm just thinking, like, the 8th pick, maybe Mitch is a sweetener, a Randall, maybe Frankie Smokes. That could get you a Harris, like a Harris type, a Tobias, a big T-bone.
Yeah, and you throw in a future pick, and that'll level up to Joel Embiid. The Knicks are going to do something hilarious, and unfortunately, the Sixers are too. And I think the rest of the league,
2 peas in a pod.
oddly, just really oddly, but
2 playoff peas in a pod.
I think a lot of smart GMs are licking their chops looking at Philly.
They are about to be victimized if they don't hire a new GM.
Yeah.
They are food.
Yeah,
Oh, you're a desperate front office who knows the public hates them, who is now on the doing this for their jobs.
DeJounte Murray
They will
DDR for Ben Simmons.
They will give up anything except for Joel and Embiid right now, and they'll give up one of those later if it means keeping their job. They will do anything. They're going to sacrifice Brett Brown. They'll give up assets. They'll give up picks. They'll give up young guys. They'll give up anything to keep their job.
And
and they will destroy whatever little is left of this rebuild.
And the Philly Twitter, who's actually BMM Twitter, throwing out all these hypothetical trades. I'm like, you never get equal value for a superstar. It's just very, very rare. And you are not going to get an all-star for one of these guys.
But we know how this plays out. If the Sixers don't get rid of this front office and put in an actual decision maker who has credibility, competency, is qualified for the job, can actually do the work, wants to do the work, and is capable of doing the work. Those kind of things. We know how this will play out. They will give up young players and assets just to dig themselves out of one of these contracts they already distributed themselves. They're going to do that.
Dolan-esque.
They'll screw it up again. It'll get worse, and then they're going to have to trade Embiid.
Yeah.
That's the writing on the wall. They won't trade Simmons. They'll trade Embiid, or they'll trade Simmons. But the reason they would want to get rid of Embiid is because Embiid doesn't like them, due to his relationship with Colangelo and Hinkie. They don't. Hinkie and he's on the Hinkie side. He named his dog Hinkie. His nickname is the Process. They don't like Embiid,
and he loves
so
Brett
they
Brown.
would trade him. Yeah, so they would trade him before they trade Simmons, in my mind, even though I think the fan base would be annoyed by it. I think they would do that.
I mean, the fan base is easily swayed, and I think...
Yeah, I know. All you have to say is he didn't want to be here,
Yeah.
and we couldn't get him to get in shape, and people would just be like, ride him on a town on a rail.
Yes, he had a good week, but they got swept. I'm like, yo...
He didn't want to be here. Didn't want to be
He
here.
had such
Didn't
a
want to
good
be here.
series, man.
Didn't want to be here. All evidence was that the Sixers never offered Jimmy Butler a contract. That was a fact. And they just were like, didn't want to be here. Didn't want to be here. They didn't offer him a contract.
Someone posted a little quick video of Joe and Jimmy interacting with some, I think the caption, like the last time Joe was happy. And I looked at it and I was like, that was just a year ago. Like, it seems like a million years ago, but like the Sixers had Jimmy Butler. Let's think about that. They had Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid. What the hell? Keep those guys together. No team gets 3 of those guys in their prime like that.
The only other prime like that is really Cookies Hoops. Like, Cookies Hoops is a imbroglio.
We are a conundrum in our
A
prime.
movable pail. Well, this has been an exciting end of the year.
Can't wait till
So anyway, I'm really happy with the state of the franchise. Everything's great.
the Knicks are doing great, the Sixers are doing great, and September's going to be awesome. Happy New Year, Ben.
Luca. Yes, it started out with optimism and ended in the depths, the bowels of despair. Cookies.